Welcome to Global Feed. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. November 8, 2025, a date that will be remembered as a pivotal moment in American history, marking the beginning of the end for a presidency unlike any other. The Trump presidency, now deep in its lame duck phase, faces a convergence of crises that threaten not just the administration, but the very foundations of American democracy and the office itself. The illusion of control, once carefully maintained, is crumbling rapidly, challenged on all sides by the judiciary, assertive state governments, and a restless, increasingly vocal electorate demanding accountability. Recent legal defeats in high-profile cases, disastrous off-year election results, and a historic government shutdown have exposed vulnerabilities that even Trump's most loyal supporters can no longer ignore. The cracks in the administration's armor are widening. State lawsuits over National Guard control and mounting electoral losses signal not just a rejection of Trump's authority, but a growing recognition of the limits of his once formidable political coalition. Allies are wavering, and opposition is hardening. Public protests are erupting in cities and towns across the nation. These demonstrations are not isolated incidents, they're a national chorus, a groundswell of resistance against policies widely seen as assaults on civil liberties, democratic norms, and basic governance. Each crisis feeds the next in a relentless cycle. Legal battles in the courts embolden Trump's opponents, giving them new momentum and legitimacy. Electoral losses, once unthinkable in Trump's strongholds, now weaken his mandate and erode the sense of inevitability that once surrounded his leadership. The government shutdown, stretching on with no end in sight, fuels public outrage and hardship, as ordinary Americans feel the consequences in their daily lives. At food banks, in shuttered offices, and on the streets, the story is no longer just about Trump's next move, but about how the entire system, courts, states, and citizens, responds to the legacy of his presidency and the challenges it leaves behind. This is a turning point in American history, one defined by resistance, real consequences, and a political landscape being reshaped in real time. The nation stands at a crossroads, with the future uncertain, but the demand for change louder than ever before. Presidential authority is under siege in America's courtrooms. A Trump-appointed judge in Oregon permanently banned the administration's use of federalized National Guard troops, calling the move a fabricated crisis. States like California and Illinois are fighting what they see as a presidential power grab, warning of a dangerous precedent. Conflicting rulings in federal courts make a Supreme Court showdown inevitable, with the core question: where does presidential power end and state sovereignty begin? Meanwhile, the administration uses the Department of Justice to try to overturn Trump's own felony conviction, blurring the line between public interest and personal gain. These legal battles are eroding public trust and redefining the limits of executive power. The 2025 off-year elections were a political disaster for Republicans, exposing the party's fatal dependence on Trump. Without him on the ballot, the MAGA coalition collapsed. Democrats won landslides in Virginia, New Jersey, and even deep red Georgia. The GOP's brand is toxic to independents and suburban voters, and the party has no clear leader or agenda beyond loyalty to Trump. The pattern is undeniable. Republicans struggle to win when Trump isn't the focus. The party is trapped, unable to win with Trumpism, but unable to move on from it. The recent results are a brutal warning. The current path leads to permanent minority status. This is an existential crisis for the GOP as a national force. In the aftermath of the GOP's disappointing election results, Trump's response was characteristically defiant. Rather than accepting any responsibility, he pointed fingers at party leaders, campaign strategies, and even the candidates themselves, anyone but him. He insisted that the losses occurred simply because his name wasn't on the ballot, suggesting that only his personal presence could have changed the outcome. Trump's popularity is undeniable, but it's also deeply personal and fiercely loyal. His supporters are drawn to him as an individual, not to the Republican Party or its broader platform. He commands a personality cult, not a traditional political movement, and his rallies are more like spectacles than party-building events. This dynamic has left the GOP in a precarious position. Voters who are energized by Trump's rhetoric and style rarely show up for other Republican candidates. When Trump isn't on the ticket, turnout drops, and the party is left with a base that is loyal only to him, while the broader electorate feels alienated or even repelled by his brand of politics. The 2025 election results make this clearer than ever. Trump's endorsements, once seen as a golden ticket, have become a liability for many candidates. Instead of boosting campaigns, his support now often drags them down as swing voters and moderates turn away. As a lame duck president, Trump's influence is fading. Republican politicians, sensing his waning power, are increasingly reluctant to tie their fortunes to his. The party's leadership is fractured, with many quietly searching for a new direction. What remains is a party in decline, a fractured coalition with no clear successor. Trump is a king with no heirs, presiding over a movement that cannot outlast his own presence. The GOP is left struggling to redefine itself in the shadow of his divisive legacy. Trump's legacy is a movement that cannot survive without him. The energy, the crowds, the spectacle, all fade when he is not at the center. The image he created is uniquely his own. And for the Republican Party, it's an act that no one else can follow. The nation is paralyzed by the longest government shutdown in history, inflicting real pain on millions. Government offices are closed, and essential services are halted, leaving citizens in a state of uncertainty and frustration. The ripple effects are felt across the country. From urban centers to rural communities, food stamp benefits lapsed for 42 million Americans until a court intervened, and air travel chaos looms as the FAA slashes flights. Supermarket shelves are emptying and families are struggling to make ends meet. The shutdown's impact is not just financial but deeply personal, affecting the daily lives of ordinary citizens. The shutdown is dismantling basic government functions, eroding public trust, and driving consumer sentiment to record lows. Public protests are becoming more frequent as people demand action and accountability. The sense of abandonment by their leaders is palpable among the populace. Trump's attempts to spin the crisis, like touting a cheaper Thanksgiving basket, only deepen the disconnect with struggling Americans. His reassurances fall flat as the reality of the shutdown's impact becomes more apparent. Families are turning to food pantries and using coupons to stretch their dwindling resources. This is more than a budget fight. It's a symptom of a government willing to hold its people hostage for political gain. The political stalemate in Congress shows no signs of resolution, and the human cost continues to rise. Families are caught in the crossfire of a battle they have no control over. Faith in the system is eroding as the executive branch prioritizes leverage over service. Federal workers are left in limbo, unsure of when they will return to work or receive their next paycheck. The trust between the government and its employees is fraying. The damage to the relationship between government and governed may be lasting. The long-term consequences of this shutdown could reshape the political landscape and redefine the public's expectations of their leaders. The question remains, can the government rebuild the trust it has lost? Across the country, public dissent is surging against the administration's policies. Campus walkouts and city protests reject Trump's attempts to impose a political agenda on higher education and society. Only one college accepted the administration's controversial funding offer, underscoring widespread resistance. In Portland, mostly peaceful protests were met with federal overreach, but the courts sided with citizens' rights. The protests reflect a loss of faith in government and a demand for accountability. This is not mob rule, it's democracy in action, spanning universities and working-class communities alike. The voices from the ground are a reminder. Presidential power is not absolute, and the consent of the governed can be withdrawn. Facing legal defeats and public unrest, the Trump administration has doubled down on controversial executive actions. A new National Guard Quick Reaction Force, answerable only to the president, aims to bypass state authority. The administration's militaristic posture and erratic foreign policy moves, rewarding authoritarian leaders and issuing political pardons, signal desperation, not strength. These actions further alienate the political center and set dangerous precedents for future presidents. Trump's troubles are cascading: legal challenges, electoral losses, a crippling shutdown, and mass protests all reinforce each other. His final power plays deepen the crisis as the system pushes back against executive overreach. The unraveling is institutional, constitutional, and social. The outcome of this turning point remains unwritten.